Welcome to today's Explainer. If you've stepped outside anywhere in the country today, Sunday, August 9, 2026, you already know the atmosphere is putting on an absolute masterclass in extremes. We're diving right into the data today to wrap our heads around the massive and frankly dangerous climate divides currently splitting the United States. We're not just talking about isolated flukes here. We are looking at a huge, nationwide pattern of baking heat, relentless moisture, and some very severe fire threats.
So, to make sense of all this, we're going to group the nation's severe weather into four main themes. First, the baking heat out west. Then, the choking wildfire smoke up north. After that, the suffocating humidity blanketing the south. And finally, the volatile storm threats creeping up the east coast. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The Western Heat Dome. We are talking relentless, triple-digit temperatures.
Right now, a life-threatening, record-challenging ridge of high pressure has firmly parked a massive heat dome over the region. Just look at Las Vegas. They're hitting a staggering 114 degrees today. That actually matches yesterday's airport reading, and it's pushing uncomfortably close to their all-time record of 116. Because of this, an extreme heat warning is in full effect, and Clark County has literally had to open emergency cooling stations through at least Tuesday. But hey, it's not just Vegas. Phoenix is right there with them, sitting anywhere from 111 to 114 degrees under just relentlessly clear skies. And honestly, the most punishing part? There's basically zero recovery window overnight. Lows are only expected to dip into the low 90s. Places like Yuma and Lake Havasu are tracking some of the absolute hottest readings in the entire country right now.
But this high-pressure ridge isn't just baking the deep southwest. It's actually pushing way up north, too. I mean, even as far north as Casper, Wyoming, temps are shooting up to 101 degrees. This extreme heat is stretching right across the high plains. Denver is approaching 100, and Cheyenne is sitting right at the century mark. The Weather Prediction Center is warning that dangerous heat is building fast under this ridge, creating widespread major to locally extreme heat risk across the desert southwest and Intermountain West. Throw in some low relative humidity and gusty afternoon winds? Yeah, you've got incredibly critical, elevated fire weather conditions on top of all that.
Now, the absolutely crucial thing to remember here is the human impact of these numbers. As the National Weather Service explicitly warns, this isn't just, uncomfortable summer weather. It is a major physiological threat. Without cooling down, your body can go from simple heat cramps straight to heat exhaustion and ultimately to deadly heat stroke really quickly. That is exactly why those emergency cooling stations we mentioned earlier are absolutely vital.
And the contrast happening in California right now is just staggering. San Francisco is locked comfortably under its protective marine layer, sitting at a perfectly cool 63 degrees. But if you drive less than 60 miles inland, boom, that coastal relief completely vanishes. The Central Valley is just baking. You've got Sacramento at 103, Fresno and Bakersfield hanging around 104 to 106, and Redding is approaching an extreme 108 degrees under ongoing heat advisory conditions. We're talking about a massive 40-plus degree temperature swing over such a tiny distance. It perfectly illustrates just how localized and intense this high-pressure ridge really is.
All right, moving on to Section 2, wildfires and choking smoke. These are the cascading effects of all that heat.
Fueled by these persistently hot, dry conditions and with absolutely zero rain in the forecast, by the way, over 2 million acres have already burned this season in Oregon alone. Cities like Portland are tracking near 88 degrees today and staying bone dry. The fire weather conditions remain incredibly dangerous across Oregon and eastern Washington right now, and they're feeding dozens of active blazes that are literally altering the landscape and the atmosphere.
What's truly astonishing, or terrifying really, is how far-reaching this disaster is. The impact of those 2 million burned acres is definitely not staying local. Seattle, which somehow avoided smoke for most of the summer, is now getting its first significant blanket of it. Spokane is dealing with severe smoke and just terrible air quality after destructive wildfires burned right through residential neighborhoods on the city's north side last week. Down in Boise, it's 92 degrees and they're surrounded by dense smoke and active red flag warnings. Down in California, AccuWeather is warning that temperature inversions are actually trapping this wildfire smoke right at ground level, which is drastically dropping visibility. But the craziest data point here? This smoke haze is drifting so far east, it's currently sitting over Fargo and Sioux Falls in the Midwest. It's like a massive smog blanket stretching across the country.
Okay, Section 3, the Southern Humidity Bake. We're talking suffocating heat across the South.
Leaving the dry, burning, smoke-filled west behind us, we're going to shift gears to the southern half of the country. And man, they are locked in an entirely different, totally suffocating reality. The data across Texas paints a stark divide between dry heat and humid heat. Austin and San Antonio are locked in the low 100s, with Austin staying relentlessly dry. Dallas is holding at 99 degrees, with just a tiny 30 to 35% chance of an isolated afternoon storm cell that might bring brief relief before resetting into a hot Monday. But then, look at Houston. The actual air temperature is a slightly lower 97 degrees, but because of all that Gulf moisture funneling in, the heat index is being pushed well above a highly dangerous 105 degrees. And this sticky, humid danger extends all the way up to Oklahoma City and Tulsa, both sitting in the upper 90s. Down here, dangerous heat index readings are absolutely the defining story of the weekend.
But here's the most alarming part about this southern data. It's not just about today's numbers. According to AccuWeather's monthly forecast, this isn't some brief weekend spike. No, this is a sustained heat event. They're projecting daily highs in Dallas to continuously range from the upper 90s to 103 degrees for the entirety of August. The atmosphere in the south is essentially stuck on this dangerous, sweltering loop, and right now, there is no immediate end in sight.
Finally, Section 4, East Coast Storm Threats. It is muggy, unsettled, and highly convective.
Looking at our fourth extreme on the East Coast, all that intense atmospheric moisture doesn't just make it feel hot out, it actually acts as pure fuel for a volatile convective storm cycle. The entire eastern seaboard is incredibly warm, muggy, and deeply unsettled today. Up in the Northeast, cities like New York and Newark are sitting at 90 degrees, and after overnight lows that offered practically zero relief, the atmosphere is incredibly humid and fully loaded for scattered afternoon thunderstorms, all triggered by a weak shortwave moving across Pennsylvania and upstate New York. If you move down the I-95 corridor from D.C. to Philly, daytime heating combined with dew points in the low to mid-70s is supporting intense convective storm development. And the main threat there isn't just rain, it's damaging wind gusts ahead of these organized storm clusters. Further south, Gulf moisture is funneling straight into New Orleans and Baton Rouge, which keeps their storm chances highly elevated. And down in Florida, from Tampa to Orlando, you've got active daily sea breeze boundaries setting off afternoon storm cells that push temps up to 92 degrees. It's just a persistent, exhausting pattern of heat, humidity, and storm threats across the whole coast.
So, let's look at the full picture of the data today. We've got a record-tying heat dome baking the west. We have millions of acres burning in the northwest, sending choking smoke all the way out to the Dakotas. Suffocating humidity is locking down Texas and the south, and a deeply unsettled, storm-loaded air mass is spanning the entire East Coast. Honestly, the sheer scale of these extremes all happening at the exact same time is staggering. And knowing that this is just a forecast for the first weekend of the month, we really have to wonder, if the atmosphere is already stretched to these absolute limits today, what severe extremes does the rest of August have in store for us?